Nestled between the mist-shrouded hills and a forest so dense that sunlight barely pierced its canopy, there was a village called Hollow's End. Outsiders rarely visited, and those who did never stayed long. The villagers were polite but distant, their smiles never quite reaching their eyes. And then there were the rules. I first heard about Hollow's End from my grandfather's journals. He had passed years ago, leaving behind cryptic notes about a place where the old ways still held power. As a folklorist, I was intrigued. When I finally decided to visit, I expected superstition, maybe some quaint traditions. I didn't expect the rules. The moment I stepped off the bus, an elderly woman with a shawl draped over her shoulders approached me. Her voice was soft but firm. "You're new," she said. "Best you learn the rules if you mean to stay." I laughed it off. "Rules?" Her eyes darkened. "We have them for a reason." She handed me a slip of paper, yellowed with age, and walked away without another word. The rules were written in neat, looping script. 1. Do not walk near the old well after sundown. 2. If you hear whispering in the trees, do not answer. 3. Never look into a mirror by candlelight. 4. When the church bell rings 13 times, go inside and lock your doors. 5. Do not accept food or drink from the millers. 6. If you see a figure in a red cloak, close your eyes and count to 30. 7. Never speak the name Elias Crow aloud. I scoffed. Superstitious nonsense, I thought. But as the days passed, I began to notice things. The old well. On my second night, I took a walk near the edge of the village. The moon was full, casting long shadows. That's when I saw it. The old well, its stones crumbling. The wooden cover half rotted away. I remembered the first rule. Do not walk near the old well after sundown. Curiosity got the better of me. I stepped closer. The air grew colder, my breath forming mist. Then I heard it, a wet, slithering sound from deep within the well. Something was moving down there. Something breathing. I stumbled back just as a long, skeletal hand shot out from the darkness, grasping at the air where I had stood. I ran, my heart pounding, and didn't stop until I reached the inn. The whispering trees. The next morning I ventured into the forest to gather notes on local flora. The trees were ancient, their bark etched with strange symbols. As I walked, a faint whispering filled the air. No words, just a hissing, murmuring noise. If you hear whispering in the trees, do not answer. I clenched my jaw and kept walking. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. Then a voice, clear as day, called my name. "Daniel!" I nearly answered before catching myself. The voice didn't sound human. It was too smooth, too hungry. I turned and sprinted back to the village. Behind me, the whispers erupted into laughter. Shucker, the Miller's offer. The Millers were a reclusive family who lived on the outskirts of town. I met Martha Miller in the market, her sunken eyes watching me as she offered a slice of freshly baked bread. Do not accept food or drink from the Millers. I politely declined. She smiled, but her teeth were too sharp. That night, I overheard two villagers talking. Another traveler went missing, one muttered. Ate the Miller's bread and was never seen again. The Red Cloak. The worst was yet to come. One evening, as dusk settled, I saw a figure standing at the end of the lane. Tall, draped in a tattered red cloak, its face hidden in shadow. My blood turned to ice. If you see a figure in a red cloak, close your eyes and count to 30. I shut my eyes tight and counted. When I opened them, the figure was gone. But the next morning, old Mr. Harlow was found dead in his home. His face frozen in terror, his hands clutching at his own throat. The final rule. The villagers grew uneasy. They knew I had broken some of the rules. The elderly woman from my first day approached me again. "You've angered them," she whispered. "Now you must leave, or you'll end up like Elias Crow. Never speak the name Elias Crow aloud." Too late. The moment the name left her lips, the church bell began to toll. 1, 2, 3. It didn't stop. 13. The villagers rushed inside, slamming doors and locking windows. I stood frozen in the square as the sky darkened unnaturally. The whispering returned, louder now, and from the forest emerged the red-cloaked figure. Only now there were dozens of them, gliding toward the village. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the bus stop at the edge of town. As the vehicle pulled away, I looked back. Hollow's End was gone, swallowed by the mist, and in the distance the whispering followed. When Ella's mother got the job in Briar Glen, a remote village nestled between two craggy hills, she thought they were lucky. After her father's death, they needed a fresh start. The town was quiet, the air was fresh, and the people were polite, maybe too polite. On their first day in the village, an old man in a tan coat approached them outside their new cottage. "Newcomers, huh?" he asked, squinting. "Name's Walter." "Ella, this is my mom, Claire." Walter smiled, revealing yellow teeth. "Well, welcome. You'll find things peaceful here, as long as you follow the rules." "Rules?" Ella asked. Walter's smile faded. "You'll get a copy. They're important." That night, after unpacking, Claire found a typed note slipped under the door. It was folded, crisp, and smelled faintly of cloves. Rules for new residents of Briar Glen. 1. Do not be outside after 8:43 p.m. Not 8:44, not 8:45, 8:43 exactly. 2. If you hear tapping on your window, ignore it, no matter how many taps, no matter how curious you are. 3. Every Wednesday, leave a bowl of milk by your doorstep. Refill it if it's empty before dawn. 4. Do not dig in your backyard. 5. If you find a tooth that isn't yours, burn it immediately and bury the ashes in salt. 6. Should a white cat follow you, do not pet it, do not speak to it, do not acknowledge it. 7. Never speak the name of the woman in the well. If you hear her voice, loudly. 8. Don't ask the villagers what happened to the school teacher. Just don't. 9. At 3:12 a.m., if you wake up and hear breathing that isn't yours, do not move. It can't see you if you're still. 10. Above all else, do not break more than one rule in a single night. Claire read the list aloud, then looked at Ella, forcing a chuckle. Some local folklore to scare newcomers, I guess. But Ella didn't laugh. That night, Ella stared at her window. She didn't expect tapping. Not really. But around 2 a.m., a single tick came, then another, then 3 in rapid succession. She sat up, heart pounding. "Don't look," she thought. The tapping stopped. Then a whisper, faint and childlike. "Ella, come see." She pulled the covers over her head and hummed, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," until morning. The next day, Ella tried to bring up the rules with her mother. "It's just creepy nonsense," Claire said. "People believe all sorts of weird things in small towns. Don't let it get in your head." But it was already there. That afternoon, Ella noticed a white cat following her as she walked home from the village store. It kept its distance, just trotting behind like a shadow with bright eyes. She didn't speak to it, not even when it meowed. On Wednesday, Claire forgot the milk. At 4 a.m., Ella heard the most awful sound, like something dragging itself across gravel, then a slurp. When she peeked through the curtain, she saw a tall, pale shape crouching by the doorstep, lapping something invisible. The next morning, the grass near the door was scorched black. Ella started carrying the rules with her, Walter noticed. "Smart girl," he said, patting her shoulder. "The rules keep the balance." Between what and what? Walter only smiled and walked away. 2 weeks in, Claire laughed more. The job was going well. Ella, though, hardly slept. She kept the windows locked and salt lines at the sills. But then one night, Claire broke 2 rules. It started with the digging. She wanted to plant a garden. "I know the paper says not to, but come on, Elle," she said, shoveling soil. "Superstition." That night, she stayed late at the clinic. "I'll be home by 8:30, she promised. She came home at 8:46. Ella was waiting by the door, holding the rule list like a Bible. "You can't break 2 in one night," she whispered. Claire brushed past her, laughing. "Nothing's going to happen, sweetie." At 3:12 a.m., Ella awoke to the sound of breathing. It wasn't hers. It was wet, close, guttural. She stayed still, holding her breath. Something moved across the floor, slow, dragging, as if each limb was unfamiliar with motion. Then it stopped by her bed. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe. Eventually, it left. But when Ella dared to look toward her mother's room, the door was ajar. Inside, there was a pool of dark liquid on the carpet. The window was open, and Claire was gone. The next morning, the entire village seemed different, colder, less curious. Ella told the police. They searched half-heartedly. Nobody asked questions. She ran to Walter. "She broke 2 rules," Ella cried. "The garden and the curfew." Walter paled. "The ground here remembers," he said, "and the dark doesn't like being disrespected." "Can I get her back?" Walter looked away. "Once the dark claims someone, it doesn't let go, but you can keep it from taking you." He gave her a pouch of salt, a candle made of wax and bones, and a second list. Additional guidelines for orphaned residents. 1. Never sleep in the same room 2 nights in a row. 2. Do not look into mirrors longer than necessary. 3. If your mother comes back, it isn't her. Don't open the door. 4. Always knock 3 times before entering any room, especially if it's empty. 5. Avoid the woman who sings at the edge of the woods. She only sings when she's hunting. 6. If you see your reflection blink when you don't, smash the mirror and burn the pieces. 7. You may cry, but do not scream. Screaming tells them where you are. 8. Leave a coin under your pillow each night. If it's gone in the morning, say thank you out loud. Always thank them. 9. Stay away from the well. Ella obeyed. She moved rooms nightly, thanked the invisible coin takers. She never screamed. But then came the night her mother knocked at the door. "Ella," the voice crooned, "I'm sorry, sweetie. I forgot the rules. Let me in." It was her voice, exactly. Ella sat frozen on the couch, candle burning low. The voice returned at 3:12 a.m., soft and pleading. "It's cold out here, please, baby." Ella cried but stayed silent. The next morning, claw marks covered the door frame. She lasted 3 more months. She grew thin, quiet, her eyes always watching. No one offered to adopt her. She didn't want them to. But on the final night, she forgot a rule, a small one. She stayed in the same room 2 nights in a row. She was so tired. When she opened her eyes at 3:12, the breathing was inside her ear, not beside her, in her, as though her own lungs weren't the only ones she had. She screamed. She shouldn't have. They found the cottage abandoned, the door wide open, salt scattered, the list of rules pinned to the wall with a rusty nail. On the kitchen table sat a single bowl of milk, and at the edge of the woods, a white cat purred, licking its paws. Waiting, always waiting. When Thomas inherited the cottage from his late uncle, he hadn't heard of Hollow's Edge. It was a speck of a village, not on any modern maps, nestled deep in a forgotten valley surrounded by ancient pine forest. The letter had been simple. Take the house, but if you go, follow the rules. Don't ask, just obey. It sounded ridiculous, but after losing his job and with nowhere else to go, Thomas packed his things and drove across the country to claim it. Hollow's Edge appeared suddenly out of the mist, as if conjured. The roads narrowed, the trees thickened, and then there it was. Stone cottages, crooked chimneys, and narrow lanes paved with moss-covered cobbles. No Wi-Fi, no cell service, not even a gas station. As he stepped out of the car, a woman in a gray shawl approached. "You must be Thomas." Her voice was dry and brittle. "That's me. You know my uncle?" She nodded, unsmiling. "We all knew him. Come, you'll need these." She handed him a yellowed envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper, typewritten, its corners curled with age. Rules for residents of Hollow's Edge. 1. Be indoors before sunset, every night, no exceptions. 2. Do not respond to knocks on your door after dark, even if they know your name. 3. Place an iron key under your pillow every night. Do not sleep without it. 4. If you hear footsteps on your roof, remain silent. Do not look outside. 5. Do not enter the forest past the stone marker, ever. 6. On the first Monday of each month, leave a piece of meat on your doorstep. 7. If your reflection smiles before you do, cover every mirror and wait until sunrise. 8. Do not kill any crows. 9. Never ask about the well behind the church. 10. You may break one rule. Once, not twice. Thomas blinked. "What is this? A joke?" The woman didn't answer. She just looked at him with something like pity and walked away. That night, Thomas unpacked. The house was musty but livable. The forest pressed close to the windows, dark and silent. As sunset approached, the village seemed to fold in on itself. Doors shut, curtains closed, lamps flickered on behind thick glass. Thomas shrugged and locked the door, telling himself the rules were local folklore, superstition, but he still slid the iron key under his pillow, just in case. At 3 a.m., someone knocked. 3 slow, deliberate raps. "Thomas?" A voice, soft, female. "Are you awake?" His heart nearly stopped. It was his mother's voice, but she'd been dead for 3 years. He didn't move, didn't breathe. He squeezed his eyes shut until morning light broke through the curtains. The door bore no sign of a visitor, but the iron key had split down the middle, like it had been struck by lightning. The next day he walked to the village square. People were polite, but distant. No one would talk about the rules. When he mentioned the knock, an old man muttered, "You didn't open it, did you?" and walked away. The only one who spoke openly was a boy no older than 15 named Jamie. "They come when you don't follow the rules," he said. "Not all at once. They test you first." "Who?" Jamie shrugged. "We don't know what they are, just that the rules keep them out." That night, Thomas forgot to put the iron key under his pillow. He didn't mean to. He'd left it on the kitchen counter after cleaning. He woke up gasping, cold and wet, like he'd been pulled from a river. His sheets were damp, muddy. Pine needles were scattered across his floor. A single crow feather lay on his chest. He didn't sleep the next night, just clutched the key and stared at the shadows until dawn. On the first Monday of the month, he ignored the rule about leaving meat on the doorstep. "Stupid," he muttered. "I'm not feeding raccoons." At 2 a.m., a sound woke him, a soft squelching, wet, sloppy, like meat being chewed. He peeked through the curtain. A shape hunched on his porch, pale, thin, its back to him, its spine arched like a question mark, and it twitched with each bite of something invisible. Then it stopped and turned. It had no face, just a skin-covered blank, except for a wet slit where a mouth should be. It stood up slowly and knocked. Thomas collapsed to the floor, shaking. "Just one rule," he whispered. "I only broke one." The thing lingered for hours. Only as dawn broke did it dissolve into mist. After that, Thomas obeyed every rule religiously. He burned candles at dusk, slept with the key, left meat, stayed far from the church and its ruined well. But then, one rainy afternoon, a crow slammed into his window and fell dead to the ground. He picked it up without thinking. Before he could stop himself, he tossed it into the trash. That night, he woke to find every window wide open. Feathers covered the floor, hundreds of them. A whisper followed him from room to room. Panicked, Thomas ran to the church. The doors were nailed shut. He circled to the back and stared at the well. It was sealed with an iron grate. Vines wrapped it like veins. He should have walked away, but something was whispering his name. Soft, beckoning. Against everything, he leaned in. Inside the well, dozens of eyes stared back. Human. Animal. Black pits set into a churning, writhing mass. And one voice, his uncle's. "You broke the rules, Tommy. Now they're watching." He stumbled backwards, slipped, and hit his head. He awoke in his bed. Jamie sat beside him. "You saw the well?" Thomas nodded slowly. "You shouldn't have. I didn't open it." "You don't have to. Just looking is enough." Thomas's voice cracked. "What do I do?" Jamie stood, eyes sad. "You get one mistake. Maybe two, but not three." Thomas froze. "That was my third?" Jamie nodded. "They'll come tonight, at sunset." Thomas locked every door, every window, covered the mirrors, held the key like a weapon, left meat, hummed, prayed, cried. At 3:00 a.m. the knocks came. 1, 2, 3. "Thomas!" a voice rasped. "We've waited!" He didn't move. But the key this time melted. The locks clicked open. The front door creaked. His final thought as the air turned black and cold and sharp as bone was this: he should have just followed the rules. The next morning, Jamie walked past Thomas's house. The door stood open. Inside, nothing remained. No furniture, no clothes, not even dust. Just a note pinned to the wall with a bone. "Rules for new residents of Hollow's Edge. Please read carefully. You may break one, not two, never three." The village of Hollow's End didn't appear on any map. Tucked between jagged cliffs and a forest so thick even sunlight struggled to pierce through, it was a place forgotten by time. The few outsiders who stumbled upon it never stayed long. Some said it was the eerie silence that drove them away. Others whispered about the rules. Ethan Carter had no intention of stopping in Hollow's End. His car had broken down on the winding mountain road, and with night falling fast, he had no choice but to seek help. The village looked like something out of an old painting. Crooked cottages with thatched roofs, cobblestone streets worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, and an unsettling stillness in the air. The first sign that something was wrong came when he knocked on the door of the nearest house. A pale-faced woman cracked it open just enough to peer at him with wide, fearful eyes. "You shouldn't be here after dark," she whispered. Ethan frowned. "My car broke down. I just need a phone or a place to stay until morning." The woman hesitated before speaking again, her voice trembling. "If you must stay, you must follow the rules. Break even one, and you won't live to see sunrise." Before he could ask what she meant, she thrust a yellowed piece of paper into his hands and shut the door with a finality that sent a chill down his spine. Ethan unfolded the paper, his stomach twisting as he read the words scrawled in faded ink. "Rules of Hollow's End. 1. Do not speak to the children. If you see them playing in the square after dusk, look away and walk faster. They are not what they seem. 2. Never enter the church. Its doors are sealed for a reason. If you hear singing from within, cover your ears and run. 3. Do not answer knocks at your door after midnight." No matter how familiar the voice sounds, it is not human. 4. If the bell tolls 13 times, hide immediately. Something has gotten inside the village. 5. Always leave an offering at the old well. Bread, salt, or a drop of blood. The well is always watching. 6. Do not look into the mirrors for too long. Your reflection may start moving on its own. 7. Never whistle at night. It calls them. Ethan scoffed. Some kind of twisted local joke, he figured. Still, as the last light of day faded, the village seemed to shift around him. Shadows stretched too long. The wind carried whispers that weren't quite words. A child's laughter made him jump. In the town square, 3 children played with a frayed rope, skipping in perfect unison. Their faces were too pale, their smiles too wide. Ethan remembered the first rule and averted his gaze, quickening his step. The only inn in town, the Restful Traveler, was a sagging building with a flickering lantern above the door. The innkeeper, a gaunt man with hollow cheeks, studied Ethan with suspicion before sliding a rusted key across the counter. Room at the end of the hall. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone. Ethan nodded, suddenly eager to be behind a locked door. The room was musty, the bed creaking under his weight. He tried to sleep, but the silence was oppressive. Then, just as he began to drift off, knock, 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 his blood turned to ice. The rules flashed in his mind. Do not answer knocks after midnight. The knocking came again, louder. Then a voice, his mother's voice, called softly. Ethan, let me in, sweetheart. It's cold out here. His breath caught. His mother had been dead for 10 years. Ethan clamped a hand over his mouth, trembling as the thing outside continued to plead in her voice. Then, mercifully, it stopped. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. At dawn, he bolted from the inn, desperate to leave. But as he passed the old well, a voice hissed from the darkness within. You didn't leave an offering. Ethan stumbled back, heart hammering. He fumbled in his pockets, tossing a crumpled bill into the well. A wet, slithering sound followed, and he ran. The villagers watched him go, their faces blank. None tried to stop him. As he reached the edge of town, the church doors, which had been sealed shut, creaked open behind him. A chorus of voices, beautiful and terrible, began to sing. Ethan didn't look back. His car started on the first try. He never returned to Hollow's End, but sometimes on the edge of sleep, he hears the children laughing and the distant toll of a bell. 13 times. You won't find the village of Eldhollow on any map. It lies deep in the folds of a forgotten forest, where the trees are older than memory and the wind whispers things you'd rather not hear. I ended up there by accident. At least that's what I told myself. I'd been hiking alone, clearing my head after a bitter breakup and a worse job loss, when I lost the trail. Night came faster than I expected, and a cold fog began to crawl from between the trees. I should have turned back, but the flicker of a lantern in the distance drew me forward. That's how I found Eldhollow, or maybe how it found me. The village was a patchwork of thatched roofs, sagging wood, and twisted cobblestone paths. People stared at me as I entered, their eyes heavy with something between suspicion and sorrow. An elderly woman approached first. Her name was Mata. You're lost, she said flatly, not a question. I nodded. You'll stay the night. Come, but you must follow the rules. What rules? I asked, already uneasy. She didn't answer. She simply led me through winding alleys to a squat house with ivy-choked windows and a crooked chimney. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of herbs, smoke, and something fouler beneath. She handed me a brittle piece of parchment. 13 rules were scrawled in spidery ink. The rules of Eldhollow. 1. Never leave your house after the bell tolls thrice. 2. Do not look at the scarecrow in the eastern field. 3. Always greet the crows at dawn. 4. Do not accept gifts from children. 5. Keep your windows closed even in summer. 6. If the well sings, do not answer. 7. Do not speak the names of the forgotten. 8. Salt your door frames every Thursday. 9. If someone knocks thrice, do not open unless they knock twice more. 10. Never touch the red flowers. 11. Do not light fires on the new moon. 12. If you dream of the woods, wake someone immediately. 13. Above all, never ask about the 13th rule. You'll leave when it's safe, Mata said, stuffing the parchment into my hand and locking the door behind me. The first night, I heard the bell. It rang 3 times just after dusk. Then came the scratching, faint at first, like branches dragged across the walls. But there were no trees that close to the house. I stayed frozen in my bed, heart hammering in my ears. By morning, everything seemed normal. Mata brought me a bowl of thin broth and said nothing. I asked when I could leave. She ignored me. The days passed slowly, an eerie rhythm settling over everything. I saw the villagers out and about, muttering greetings to black crows perched along rooftops. I watched them sprinkle salt, hang charms, avoid the eastern field altogether. I was beginning to think I was stuck in some backwater cult when I saw the scarecrow. It stood alone in a vast, empty field of brittle grass. From a distance, it looked like any other. A sackhead, ragged clothes, limp arms, but something about it tugged at me. Maybe it was the way its head tilted slightly as if listening, or the way crows avoided that part of the village entirely. I broke Rule 2 that evening. I stared. I couldn't help it. That night, I dreamed of the woods. In the dream, I walked barefoot through pine needles. The trees whispered, and the ground beneath me pulsed like a heartbeat. When I looked down, I was leaving red footprints in the snow, except it wasn't snow, but ash. The trees leaned closer. I woke to a scream. Rushing to the window, I saw villagers gathered at the eastern field. One of them had gone out after dark. All that remained was his coat, crumpled in the scarecrow's grasp. I blinked. Its hand had moved. I demanded answers the next morning. Mata only shook her head. The rules keep us safe, that is all. But from what? I pressed. She said nothing. I grew desperate. I tried to leave, but no road led out. The woods had swallowed every path, and the fog returned if I wandered too far, turning me back in slow, sickening circles. One night, a child knocked at my door, 3 times. Rule 9. I froze. Then came 2 more knocks. I opened the door. The girl couldn't have been more than 10. Pale, barefoot, eyes too old for her face. She held out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "For you," she whispered. I remembered Rule 4. Do not accept gifts from children. I stepped back. "No, thank you." She smiled, revealing sharp teeth. "Good." Then she vanished. I didn't see her leave. One moment she was there, and the next, the hallway was empty. That was the night I found the 13th rule. It was etched into the floor beneath my bed, scratched in long, trembling lines as though done by someone who hadn't eaten in days. 13. If you begin to remember, run. The words lodged in my skull like a nail. That night, I dreamed again. This time of fire and screaming. I stood among villagers wearing wooden masks, chanting around a pyre. Someone was burning. Someone I knew. And I was clapping. I woke shaking, heart slamming against my ribs. But worse than the dream was the feeling that it wasn't a dream at all. Over the next few days, the memories came faster. A woman's face, a name, Anna, my fiancée, her screams, a forest, a circle of torches, the word sacrifice. I remembered. I had been here before. I had come willingly. Eld Hollow didn't trap people by accident. It called them. It needed people who had done terrible things. It needed people like me. I had given her to the village, for luck, for success. That's what they had promised me. I had forgotten because the rules had made me forget. But now the 13th rule had failed. The night after the memories returned, I ran through the woods, deeper and deeper, ignoring the fog, the singing from the well, the fluttering of wings that followed me. I didn't care. I had to get out. I had to tell someone, confess, beg for forgiveness. Anything but stay. But the woods didn't let me leave. Instead, I found myself back in the field. The scarecrow waited, except now. It wasn't just a figure of straw. It turned its head as I approached, slowly, deliberately. I saw her face beneath the sack, Anna's face, stitched at the mouth, eyes wide with eternal blame. I collapsed. When I woke, I was back in Mata's house, bound. "You remembered," she said, not unkindly. "You should have run faster." "Why?" I rasped. "Why any of this?" She looked at me, sadly. "The village feeds on guilt. That's how we survive. Every generation, someone comes who belongs here, who chose to come, who must be punished. The rules aren't to protect you. They're to contain you." I screamed. It didn't matter. That night, I was taken to the eastern field. The villagers wore masks again. They chanted in tongues I couldn't understand. As they tied me to the post, I saw the scarecrow beside me smile. Then the sack went over my head. They say Eld Hollow still exists. They say if you break enough rules, you'll hear a song from the well, or the scarecrow will move, or a child will knock at your door with a gift you must not take. And if you ever find a parchment with 13 rules, burn it, because by the time you start to remember why you're really there, it's already too late. Thank you for listening. Hope I didn't scare you too much. If you like my stories, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. See you next time.